Most GRC teams today maintain a risk register. They identify risks, assign likelihood and impact scores, list owners, and review the register periodically. That's useful work. But in 2026, it is no longer sufficient to be considered a strategic risk management program. The gap between tactical risk management and truly strategic risk management has widened dramatically this year, and organizations that fail to close it are finding themselves at a competitive disadvantage and regulatory risk. Today, I'm doing a deep dive into what strategic risk management actually looks like in 2026. We'll explore why the traditional risk register approach is increasingly inadequate, the 6 core components that define a strategic program, how leading organizations are integrating risk into decision-making at the highest levels, the cultural and structural barriers that keep teams stuck in tactical mode, and a practical roadmap you can begin executing this quarter to elevate your own program. This is the difference between being seen as a compliance function that produces reports and being viewed as a strategic partner that helps leadership make better decisions under uncertainty. Welcome to Applied IT GRC, the channel for practical, no-fluff insights that help you build real capability. Let's go deep into strategic risk management in 2026. Let's start with the fundamental distinction. A tactical risk management program is primarily defensive and administrative. It focuses on creating and maintaining a centralized risk register, conducting periodic risk assessments using standardized templates, generating reports for audits, regulators, and oversight committees, treating risk primarily as something to be identified, documented, and minimized. A strategic risk management program operates at a completely different level. It treats risk as an integral part of strategy formulation and execution. It actively integrates risk appetite into business planning and major investment decisions, provides forward-looking risk intelligence that shapes strategic choices rather than just reacting to them, connects individual risks to enterprise objectives and key initiatives in real time, balances risk mitigation with intelligent risk-taking to create competitive advantage, enables leadership to make informed trade-offs with clear visibility into potential upside and downside. In 2026, this distinction matters more than ever for 3 structural reasons. First, the velocity of change. AI capabilities, cloud architecture shifts, geopolitical tensions, and regulatory interpretations are moving so quickly that annual or even quarterly risk assessments leave dangerous blind spots. Second, executive and board expectations have evolved. Leaders no longer want long lists of risks. They want concise, actionable insight that helps them decide which risks are worth taking to achieve strategic goals. Third, regulatory frameworks like DORA, NIS2, and updated SEC rules are explicitly pushing organizations toward integrated, proactive risk oversight rather than siloed compliance activities. So what does a mature strategic risk management program actually look like in practice in 2026? Here are the 6 core components that separate the best programs from the rest. 1. Dynamic Risk Appetite Framework. Not a static document, but a living set of statements that clearly define acceptable levels of risk across categories: financial, operational, reputational, technological, AI-specific, third-party, etc. The strongest organizations reference their risk appetite during project approvals, M&A decisions, cloud migration planning, and AI deployment reviews. 2. Risk strategy integration. Risk is not an afterthought applied at the end of planning. Strategic initiatives are evaluated through an explicit risk lens from the very beginning, with clear documentation of risk exposure versus appetite. 3. Structured horizon scanning and emerging risk. A disciplined quarterly, or more frequent, process to identify risks that are not yet on the register. For example, new forms of AI model drift, concentration risk in foundation model providers, or shifting regulatory interpretations of high-risk AI. 4. Multidimensional risk analysis. Moving beyond simple 5x5 matrices to combine quantitative modeling, where possible, with qualitative assessment, risk velocity, interconnectedness, and second-order effects. 5. Actionable, forward-looking reporting. Executive dashboards that show current exposure versus risk appetite, trend lines, scenario analysis, and early warning indicators, not just lists of open issues. 6. Embedded accountability and culture. Clear ownership at all levels, well-defined escalation paths when risks approach appetite thresholds, and a culture that treats risk management as a shared responsibility rather than a compliance burden. Common structural barriers that keep programs tactical. Risk registers that grow too large and lose strategic relevance. Risk appetite statements that exist on paper but are rarely referenced in actual decisions. Siloed risk functions that lack visibility into strategic planning. Over-reliance on qualitative scoring without financial or velocity context. Lack of feedback loops between risk insights and business outcomes. Practical roadmap you can start this quarter. Week 1 to 2. Facilitate a risk appetite workshop with leadership and translate it into usable guidance for key decision processes. Week 3 to 4. Map your top 10 to 15 risks to current strategic objectives and flag major misalignments. Week 5 to 6. Design and launch a lightweight quarterly emerging risk review process. Week 7 to 8. Upgrade your risk reporting to include exposure versus appetite views and simple scenario analysis. Week 9 to 12. Embed risk considerations into at least 2 major decision processes. For example, vendor selection or AI pilot approval. I've prepared a free strategic risk management starter pack in the starter kit that includes Risk Appetite Framework Template with practical examples across multiple categories. Risk Strategy Mapping Worksheet. Emerging Risk Identification and Assessment Template. Executive Risk Dashboard Example, Google Sheets. Download it from the starter kit link in the description. If this deep dive into strategic risk management gave you a clearer vision and concrete next steps for elevating your program, hit like, subscribe, and follow for more strategic GRC content. Next video, Board Reporting for GRC. What executives and boards actually want to see in 2026. Thanks for watching. Where would you place your current risk management program today? Mostly tactical, transitioning toward strategic, or already operating at a strategic level? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next one.